I came from a very political family. My father was an open and avowed socialist, and he believed in cooperative efforts, always participated in some form of organization, not as an individual as much. And as I grew up, it was the Socialist Party he belonged to at the time. I was born in *24, but I remember very specifically on May Day carrying a socialist flag and marching for Norman Thomas.
Where was this?
This was in New York. The idea of organization was very, very strong in my family. My brother was a member of what was called the YPSLs, which was the Young Socialist League at the time. However, after a while during the 30s, I think my father, and I was still quite young, became disenchanted with the policies of the Socialist Party, and he broke with them. And he became what was called, in quotations, a Trotskyist. Can we stop it just for a minute? Yes. My father and my brother my brother's considerably older than I, were active in the Socialist Party, and there was a break where people felt that the organization was not doing the things that were demanded by the situation, and they, quote, became Trotskyists. I was just 14 at the time, in 1938, and being very impressed with my brother and my father, I naturally followed behind them. In 1941, I personally became active in the Trotskyist movement. And I think that my involvement in them was primarily from the point of view of what I thought was being in an organization that was going to benefit mankind, womankind, everybody. There was a period in which I was active in the unions afterwards, in the labor movement after I got married and after the war was over, particularly in the Dodge Local in Detroit. We lived there for about 10 years. And my activity then revolved primarily around the union movement. And although I was still active in the Trotskyist Party, and we did participate in many, many activities that were for labor, for the demanding of rights for the blacks, because even though we were in the North, the blacks were segregated, except not in the plants, because they were brought up during the Second World War, but they were segregated in the sense of where they lived and where they were permitted to eat. And there were issues such as housing, social issues, to which, through the labor movement, through the UAW, I was active, and so was my husband, Jack. However, because of personal reasons, Jack was fired from his job because supposedly he led a illegal strike, which was not true, but he was. He took on some other, we had to survive, so he stole a trade, is what they called. He became a carpenter. I continued to work at Dodge. It was a very hard time because it was also during the McCarthy era. And I remember specifically a very prominent woman who was a unionist at the time, Edith Van Horn, who was a Communist Party member, she was walked out of the plant on a day shift by the workers. It was that kind of thing where the McCarthyism started to seep into the union movement as well. I worked on the night shift, so I only heard about what was going on. So it was really a very sad time. There were no objections raised by any workers, even though she had been well known for her very strong pro-labor stand. After 1955, we moved to Chicago because of the need for work. Jack had to get a job, and we went out to Chicago. And Jack stole another trade, and he became an electrician. And at that point, I was no longer, and we were no longer affiliated to any political group or even to a labor party. However, we were always looking for an organizational means of expression rather than just finding something on the street or a neighbor.
Wait a minute, Mary. Go ahead again.
Did you ask me whether or not I was having children?
Yeah, right.
Well, during the war, when Jack was in service with over 3 years, Jack refused to have any children, though I did want to have some. And it was not until November of 1945 that my son was born, Michael. He was just 50 last November. And 2.5 years later in Detroit, my daughter, Suzanne, was born. And we were busy trying to earn a living. Actually, when I went to work in Detroit, I went to work just so that we can earn more money. Jack was first working in the factory, and I went to work in the factory. We worked different shifts with a half an hour in between, so as he ran in, I could run out. So that went on for 5 years. But when we moved to Chicago, and as I had said before, we were bereft of any organizational forms. Jack was able to get work as an electrician for a number of years. I went back to college because I had gone to college while Jack was in the service and in Chicago, and got my degree to teach. And I started teaching in Chicago in the middle school in what was then considered a black enclave in South Chicago. So, do you want me to let the water run? I'll take the water.
Would you mind just saying that bit about the co-op again, just maybe briefly?
When I was a young child, my parents had bought into a co-op in the North Bronx. It was then a favored tax shelter, or not a shelter, I'm sorry. They gave them tax allowances to put up co-ops, and not the type of a co-op that you would have today. And my mother was as active as my father in that situation. However, she didn't play a real active role in my thinking and development politically, because by the time the Second World War was on the scene, she was very, very concerned about my father's political activity because he was a civil servant and he worked for the city of New York as an engineer. And she was very, very worried about it. And so I did not particularly look to her for any political resolution of questions.
Wait a minute, start over again.
About the McCarthy era?
Well, whatever, just start.
Well, in response to the questions about the role of my mother in my growing up, I do remember that after I was married, and in the 1950s, the early 1950s, the McCarthy era, going to the door and having an FBI agent come to the door, questioning about, do we know these people or do we know those people? Who do you know? And our standard response at that time was, please put it in writing and I'll talk to my lawyer. And then the door was shut. But this was at my parents' house, so my mother's concerns were borne out, and I began to understand that she had some valid worries. I would say that in our own homes, in Chicago, and then again even when we moved to Pennsylvania, the FBI did not let go. Years afterwards, they would come to the door, and you couldn't miss. They would identify who they were and asked whether we knew certain people, where they are now, what they are doing, and we gave them
Teaching there.
I taught there for 2 years before we moved to Pennsylvania.
Wait a minute, you have to start that. I mean, the camera wasn't rolling when you...
You said go ahead, so I said.
Oh.
Yeah, but it takes...
Okay, two people driving the same canoe in the same family, don't do it.
Right.
You know, the camera takes a few seconds to cycle.
I understand.
Okay, go ahead.
So you taught there for 2 years?
Yes, I taught at the Carver High School. It was called a high school, but it covered a large middle school also. In a large housing development that I think was 90% black for 2 years. And during that time, Jack had lost his job as an electrician and went back and got his degree in chemistry from the University of Chicago. And he was out looking for a job, found one in Pennsylvania, and we relocated to Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia, in Bucks County. I got to work there as a teacher. It was a 5th grade class. I enjoyed the work very much. But we still felt isolated, and I was looking. And it was at that time, through something in the newspaper, and I can't remember exactly what it was, that I saw there was an organization called WILF, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, that was located not only in Philadelphia, but they had a branch in Bucks County. And I phoned them and became a member. And I have been a member since that time. It was about 1960, that time. And I participated in their regular activities that were taking place, whether it had to do with demonstrations in Washington, or whether it had to do with local affairs that we, as an organization, that WILF was participating in. And I would go to, sometimes they'd have, I'm trying to remember what the name was, I call it the teaching and in-service, in which they had an enclave in which people would go for a weekend and be told about, or there would be discussion groups about certain issues, international issues. And a lot of the things were really focused on the international scene. I did have a picture over there, but that's all right, in which we had participated in a number of one of the participations in Washington. And I think the issue at that time was 1982, was after Reagan had become president, and it had to do, I remember there was some signs that had to do with the lettuce boycott, the farm workers union, and there were still a matter of the Vietnam War was not over, So there were big signs that were dealing with sign the treaty. You know, they had that. What size should the table be? Should it be round, square, or whatnot? I had my third child shortly after moving to Pennsylvania, and I did stop teaching in the classroom, and I started teaching children that were sick at home, and I began to see some of the situations that were unfortunate. The children were very sick, and I think that my role was diminished.
Hold on a minute now. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So when you talk a little bit about the move to Vermont, you moved to Vermont.
Well, Jack took early retirement. We went in the opposite direction of most people, coming north because we were seeking the snow instead of Florida. And we liked still to keep the seasons. And though I don't think I told you I'd become a nurse, I maintained my credentials for nursing and transferred them to Vermont. I never did do any working as a nurse here. So both of us, for all intended purposes, were retired when we moved here and began by building a house. We permanently moved up to Barnet in '82. And it was the fall of '82 that we had seen in the newspaper that there was a demonstration taking place in Montpelier that, if my memory is correct, it was of some progressive nature. I'm not sure whether it had to do with divestiture by the teachers, their monies being put into bonds in South Africa, or there were other issues that were involved, that Jack and I decided to go because we were not with any other groups. We were just alone. And skiing may be wonderful, but there is something more to that beside just going out and growing your garden and skiing. And it was at this particular demonstration where they had us divided by what city we came from. And I think there was some banner that said St. Johnsbury. And as I marched down there was this very tall, gray-haired lady who looked at me and said, "And where are you from?" And I said, "Well, we're from Barnet." "And have you lived there all the time?" "No, we just moved up." "What's your name?" And so we gave her our name, and she responded by telling us that her name was Bonnie Simons, and that there was an organization were we interested in this type of activity. And I said, "Why, of course." And that was our introduction to what is now called the North Country Coalition.
So what's your experience been in the coalition?
Well, I have tried to be as active as I can. I feel it's been a very gratifying experience since '82, and I would say that that's now 15 years. They have been a very broad organization, much more than what it was when I was younger. When I was younger, it was very strictly labor and socialist organization of one type or another, whereas this covers a large gamut. But I will say, in defense of my beliefs continue in socialism and in, people are afraid to say, Marxism, I would say that that too has broadened itself. Whereas initially those ideas were primarily about just the workers and their role and the powers that be and the relationship between the two, I think that people that are thinking in much broader terms, not only in WILF, but also in the coalition and also in the socialist movements that do exist throughout the world.
Ethics about the common.
Right. Just tell me.
It's
you
rolling,
listen.
okay.
Specifically about the North Country Coalition, when I first came and met with the people, it seemed like most of their concerns were of an international nature. What was happening in South Africa, what was happening in Cambodia, what was happening down in Nicaragua, all were valid. I mean, I was much embroiled as they were with these concerns. But I think there's become a development within the group itself, so that we have, it's not that we've turned our back on international concerns, but we have begun to focus a little bit more nationally and statewide and locally. And as a consequence of that, we have attempted, and I think successfully, to make alliances with other groups locally, whether it's the Audubon Society or whether it's with the Mission Committee at the church, so that, or even to have people that are involved in local organizations like Umbrella come and speak, so that we have focused a little bit more on the issues that are involving the people that may be your neighbors.
Okay, it's rolling.
Well, I think that I'm just as much an example as most of the other active people in the North Country Coalition. As individuals, we participate in many other activities around the community in the form of volunteerism, in the form of giving things to people that do not have. Many of us are involved in the community free lunch that is offered at the North Church in St. Johnsbury. Quite a few of us who are teachers participate as volunteers in the teaching program at the Correctional Center outside of St. Johnsbury. Others are volunteers at the Athenaeum, at the hospital, and even in the school system. I think that it's an example of what our membership is, that we feel that we have the time and the desire to give to the community, not just to take. Actually, the last thing, when I had visited my physician some months ago, he turned to me and he said, "I understand you do some work down at the local jail." I said, "Yes, I do." He says, "Well, do you get any results?" And I said, "Well, I think that there are some positive results in the sense that the men at the correctional center are learning things, but I think I'm also getting some results. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't feel that I was getting some."
Nice to know.
No, that's good.
Okay.
Whenever you want to start is fine.
Do you want to set it up as a question first or not?
No, just go. I mean, go ahead.
Okay. Are you rolling?
Yep.
Well, I just think that one of the problems that we are faced with in the coalition, and probably in a lot of other organizations, is a matter of our aging. And I think that the young have to be brought into the scope of the scene. It's easy to say, well, it's good to do it in the colleges, but there are a lot of young that are not there. So you have to go back, and you have to go into the high schools. And to make things relevant to them, it is not easy for someone like myself to just give a reportage of my life and say, hey, follow it. It's not going to work that way. They have their needs. I may have had mine, and each generation has its own. And I think that if these young people could get together and see the big picture, that this society, the way we're living in it now, is not meeting their needs. It's not meeting my needs. That's why I keep going around and trying to find others that think like I do. However, I think that the future is surely not with me. It is with those that are going to come after me. And I think that they're going to finally realize one way or another, maybe by just a hammer over their heads, that this society that we're living in now is not going to be the answer. They have to look elsewhere.